Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Discourse. The Discourse is our weekly news show here at NYU Game Center, which is the game design department at New York University. And The Discourse is our weekly talk show where professors Frank Lance and Naomi Clark talk about game industry news and offer snarky hot takes and tell us what the fashionable cool thing to think is. So take it away, Frank and Naomi.
Thank you, Robert.
What's fashionable and cool in the thought world this week, Frank? Anything?
I don't know. I forgot to read the newsletter this week.
Yeah, it's tricky, right? What's our lifeline these days to thought currents? I guess it's all social media and Google.
Spend time with your own thoughts. I think during.
That's true,
and that's the coolest thing of all, people.
Like, introspection. Look inside. Just do a thought experiment in your head. Like, what if my perceptions aren't real and they're just a demon trying to trick me? That's a classic one that you can do.
I know you're just kidding, but
I'm not really. I mean, I'm all for this method.
But it is surprisingly hard to gain access to your own thoughts. You think you have direct access to your own thoughts,
right?
And it just feels like, it's the easiest thing in the world is to self-reflect and understand how. But that's
the very next step. That's the very next step in that Descartes thought experiment, right? He's like, wait, I have this sensation that I'm thinking, but how do I know that that's real?
Naomi,
etc. Yeah.
The demon is us.
Oh, what if all along we were Descartes' demon?
We are trapping ourselves in a little bell jar in a laboratory and running this strange experiment about a fictional world.
Well, yeah, I don't know about you, but I have some imaginary human beings that I torture with sensations all the time by thinking up. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and as far as I know, they're not real. I see them on Zoom once in a while. But let's go to Link. Speaking of verisimilitude, I thought we would start today with something nice and light to cheer us all up.
That's all the time we have today.
Yeah, that's it. So Eurogamer is claiming that this is a high bar for video game glitches, and that I have to say is a headline that caught my eye, saying that there's a new high bar for glitches. This is a pretty good one. We have to watch the video to really understand it. So hopefully our stream capacity is up for it. Let's see. So that's not it. That's not the video. Sorry, Robert, you have to go back up. There's like a little link that says, yeah, I have no words. That's the video. So, okay. So this video is of like a goal that's about to happen. And then if you look closely, the ball is actually stuck. It's stuck on the goalpost.
Yeah.
And the great thing about this is that all the players and the announcer all react to this event like in a bewildering way. They're like all trying to get the ball, trying to do whatever they can to get the ball. And the announcer is like, oh, it's hit the goalpost. Oh, wait, the goalpost got in the way. The goalpost, no.
It would be a goal, but for that tricky goalpost.
Right, so the announcer is, the announcer like of this voice actor, right, is like running through all of their, like everything they have to say, every bark that has to do with the goalpost. Meanwhile, the players are sort of like trying to get the ball on both sides. The human player runs over controlling one character, trying to get into the act two, and can do even less. Let's just be clear. Than
Here's what I thought when I first saw this video. I thought the giant squirrel was the glitch. Can you go back to the first frame of this video?
Oh yeah, the giant squirrel.
There's an enormous squirrel, and I was like, "Oh, that's an interesting glitch." Was there supposedly like a squirrel in the? Yeah, see, I was like,
enormous squirrel in the stands. That's just regular. That's just regular FIFA. Just normal. That's normal. And in FIFA 28. Yeah, exactly. That's at least in our current reality, you have a giant cardboard cutout of the squirrel in the stands in order to, the big squirrel. It's an important part of sports. The other thing that happened in FIFA 20 was there used to be just gigantic goalkeepers. Like you would get a goalkeeper who would be like 8 or 10 feet tall, just procedurally generated by the system.
What's nice? What's super nice about this one is that it reveals a little bit of the machinery of how these games work, because the announcer is a separate system that is responding in real time to the events of the game. That the announcer doesn't stop or break, when this strange anomaly happens.
Exactly.
You get a little glimpse. It's almost like a little fake person announced. It's a tiny little system, but it's almost like a fake person who just lives inside of this video game, and all they do is observe the events and talk about them. And here's one that they've never seen before, but they're trying to make sense of it, and they just keep talking.
Yeah, trying to figure it out. And they behave in a different way than the players, who are all like, wait, can I see if I can slide tackle? Can I slide tackle this ball? Can I head this ball with my head? Yeah, it's great. So I really feel like I love to see the emergence of this level of glitch in the wild. And I always feel like it's a tragedy to imagine how many glitches are ruthlessly exterminated before they can actually appear out there in public. I never know what to do about this. Of course, we have plenty of glitches. There are all these lovely, like what I think of as hothouse glitches, grown artisanally by expert glitch creators, right? And then there's this kind of stuff, which is like comes out of FIFA is kind of well known for it. There are other games. I remember Robert used to have a great video that was all glitches from Skate, I think, or one of the Skate series. Oh, so good.
It's a classic. Again, because of their commitment to procedurality.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? Because Skate famously has this kind of physicsy approach to doing the tricks and the controls. And what's funny is that this
Skate 3,
for some reason, happening in sports games makes it especially poignant and beautiful, because sports themselves have this quality of sometimes having bugs in them and glitches. Like it makes me think of the Isner and Mahut match, the tennis match. The longest tennis match of all time, the one that went for several days because they were just caught in this strange loop. It's a little bit like a glitch.
Right, and skating, like a skating game should be able to express the nature of complete skating wipeouts in a way that's not just pre-planned, right?
Yeah, the culture of skateboarding is about exploring the edges of things and finding new purposes for them and seeing what's possible. So it makes sense.
Right. So it's kind of I always feel it's kind of a crime when like a big company comes in and is like, no, we're removing all of these from the environment, right? We're wiping out these glitches. It feels to me like, like someone eliminating tiny species from the Amazon, except honestly, probably not as destructive for our entire ecosystem. But there's something that's like all these little tiny things were created through our, like the creative action of our species, and then they're all just get wiped out because we're like, these are not the kind that we wanted. So maybe it's more like you create a whole bunch of new life forms in a test tube in a petri dish, and then you kill most of them.
I'm gonna go on record as saying I don't think it's a crime when companies try to fix things that remove them. In fact, glitches exist at the intersection between problems in code and attempts to solve them. Like, it's not like getting rid of those attempts to remove glitches would create more glitches. Like glitches outside of the
they do. It does create more glitches, right? But I don't know. I just sort of wish that there was a glitch sanctuary somewhere, just like there is for farm animals that have glitches.
Yeah, we're doing a pretty good job of keeping farm animals alive on the planet, and I think we're doing a pretty good job of.
But there's specific farm animals, Frank. The one, the cow that's born with 3 legs gets to go to a special farm. Why not this glitch? I guess they live on YouTube. They're immortalized on YouTube now. So.
There's a lot of games that some of which I made with you. That a scrap of documentation exists of that.
No, it's true. It's true. But
big games that we made that are like big, important, good games. So I think it's fine. I think we're doing a good job documenting these glitches.
All right, yeah, you're right. They got to live on YouTube, and people are recording them, so that's quite good. All right, let's go on to something like slightly more serious and like even more positive in a lot of ways, right? And that's the how incredible the NBA is. So the WNBA. I'm sorry.
Speaking of sports.
Yeah, this is from this week. The New York Times has this big article. I recommend reading this because I think it really shows some nice insight into, okay, like what is the process by which this all happens, right? And the New York Times, and I don't know like how totally accurate this is. I don't know. Maybe we have people like sports women and creators of blogs and mailing lists about sports who could tell us. But the part of the story here is that the WNBA was really the origin point for so much activism that we've been seeing in Major League Sports lately. It seems completely believable to me.
Way ahead of the curve.
Right. Yeah. Before Colin Kaepernick, did his sort of famous kneeling, right? Like that they were getting this stuff started. And what I loved about this is it no holds barred just says, look, a lot of these athletes, all of them are women, a lot of them are Black, and a lot of them are queer. And at the beginning, it was all sort of like, well, how do we sex up the WNBA? I kind of remember that era when there was this like how short should the shorts be in the WNBA? Like stupid discussions happening that I remember reading about in the news, and then they were also forced to kind of repress their relationships and not talk about their relationships, which eventually it's not practical anymore, right? We're not talking about one token executive at a company who is a Black queer woman who then has to sort of like stay pretty like tight-laced and like not really be herself because she's surrounded by a ton of other people. This is a critical mass of like a ton of athletes who like just in terms of their sheer numbers, there are so many Black lesbians playing basketball in this league that it's not possible to just tell them all to shut up, right? And I think, and they're just being who they are. They didn't set out with a plan to be like, oh, let's be activists, right? It just came organically out of who they are, and I'm like, yes, this is such a huge part of how change happens. Yeah,
and in addition to that, I think the presence of the WNBA at its historically already represents a kind of progressive activism. That there is a league for women who play basketball. That at its roots, I think, has that spirit in it, and I think that's maybe one of the reasons as well.
Right, and I think it's important to mention what like Tony Pizza is saying in chat, that they're also the like lowest paid out of all like so many sports, even though they have like a huge fan base. It's not the sponsorships and all of the other money stuff floating around it, and the like sheer number of ticket sales is probably still dwarfed by sports that have been leagues that have been around for longer. But the WNBA is amazing. Like they're a joy to watch too. Anyway, watch WNBA games.
WNBA players fairly. How about that? How about that as an idea, right?
Yeah, that's not
Come on.
exactly. Seriously.
Come on,
and Oh my God. And then have you been following this thing about the owner of one of the teams? Oh, no, the owner's name is Kelly Loeffner. I'm sure somebody will remind me of like what which team she owns, but she's like a hardcore conservative and she owns a team and the team is boycotting her. And like protesting against the owner. It was
Lasso episode.
Yeah, Kelly Warnock. I'm sorry, Kelly Warnock. Okay. She owns the Dream. Yeah, and I don't know. I just think it's amazing that it's like watching a sports movie, like watching this news unfold, where there's like like Trump supporting like ultra right wing, like straight laced corporate boss lady, and then like all of her players are like fuck the boss. Anyway, I can't. Yeah. Oh, and great. So Tony has linked a link in chat as well, right? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's Senator Kelly Loeffler is the owner, oh yeah. And I'm sorry, her opponent in the election is Dr. Raphael Warnock, and the team is supporting her opponent in this Senate race, which I'm like, that's I don't know. It's amazing. Yeah, good for them.
Good for them.
Yes, excellent. Okay, let's keep going. Actually, while we're at it, yes.
Speaking of progress and the future.
Yeah, let's promote one of our own programs for a second. And actually, everybody in chat, everybody who's watching this, we want you to help us get the word out because a deadline's coming up for Future Game Designers, which, if you don't know, is our high school program. And yeah, like we often have a lot of amazing high school students from around the New York area come to do like 14 weeks of workshops making games, learning how to make games, and it's free. It's open to like so many kinds of people from like every borough of New York, and now actually way beyond, right? Because it's actually open for the first time to people online.
Yeah. Naomi, maybe I'm hitting this segue thing a little too hard, but would you describe Future Game Designers as the farm team for the NYU Game Center?
I don't think that's I think that's pretty accurate, right? Like I think we can just
right down in the middle of the fairway with that one.
Yeah, no, like you're really like you're laying out the whole game plan for everybody. I hope that I don't know. I would be happy if our competition, like folks over at USC, were watching and wanted to do something similar, because we've had so many amazing students come out of Future Game Designers, right?
Yeah, no joke. The high school kids make some amazing games. Like there's always a corner of the end of year show that we like a part of a room or something where the future game designers get to set up their projects, and games in that corner, you know what I'm saying? Like
I mean a lot of their games are gonzo, so I mean they're various degrees of playable, but they're like the cream of the crop are always like, oh my god, like please come to the game center, please keep making games. And even the ones which are like very glitchy in the maybe the glitch you wouldn't want to preserve way, they're still like kind of amazing ideas. So
very simple, tons of energy, just like one great idea, which is the kind of a style I like. So
and check out chat for a link to some of the games from previous years. It's a really good question in chat.
Quick, like, I want to describe one of them because I still remember it in my head. It was a little top-down action game where the only difference is you could just teleport at all times. So
wherever you want.
Your mouse was pointing, you could pop there. So you were able to move. Like it was that's the idea. That was the whole game. And it was really good.
Yeah, and so Salty Horse is asking, will there be less emphasis on physical games? I mean, I think there's actually quite a bit of emphasis on digital games in Future Game Designers already, right? Like, when we're doing basics of game design, they're learning a lot of the same kind of stuff that we teach in our introductory classes, and we're figuring out right now how to adapt that for students of every age. But and that's right. Thanks, Tony, for reminding us. They used Tabletopia over the summer. Maybe we'll use Tabletop Simulator. We'll figure it out.
I love Tabletop Simulator. Everyone I know hates it. Everyone I know is like, you're an idiot. And I'm like, I learned it at just the right time, as the beginning, kind of towards the beginning of the lockdown. And it somehow just
sank into your heart.
It filled a hole for me. And I was using it for a lot of paper prototyping and playing games with other people. And it just felt kind of like good, like the material qualities. It's a weird 3D space where they're not trying to mimic any of the rules of the game, but just the behavior of cards and dice and other conventional game items. And so anyway, I'm a big fan. Also a paid sponsor. I'm legally required to say I'm an ambassador for Table. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
But
you might be. You might be one of the only people. I don't know. I would love it if there was sort of I guess it's the closest thing we have to a standard. I've been using playingcards.io and Roll20 a lot and those are just 2D versions.
Yeah, there's something nice about the 3D space. You're looking around, you're looking down at the board. Then you've got your friend on Skype or whatever, and you're talking, and you just forget for a moment that you're not sitting in the room with that person.
Yeah, kind of true.
Because you're playing a board game, you're already in the weird space where you're not quite physically in the room. So
and you see these hands moving stuff around, and you're like, oh, that's your hand, and because I think it does kind of work. So maybe
Danny Hawk points out, Danny Hawk, internet famous Danny Hawk. We're now required to say internet famous Danny Hawk reminds me in the chat that our students, he was helping me teach the game design where we had tabletop simulators. And our students made folk games in it, and it was one of the best assignments ever. This was in Danny's idea, internet famous Danny's idea.
Danny Hawk, international folk games expert. That's how I think of him these days. All right, so please, if you know a high school student anywhere, I guess with some time zone constraints, they have to be available on weekends to do workshops, but they're interested in participating in this, like send them to our website. We'll put the link in chat, and please help us spread the word. We love to get applications from brilliant students for this. All right, let's keep going. Oh, this next one is a fun one. I think we've touched on this topic before, but there's been a new development. This is about misleading mobile game ads. This is just a perennial favorite, right? Like these, like you guys hopefully have run into these at some point, usually on Facebook, I guess, but they're on other social networks as well. These ads which just don't represent the game that they're purporting to show at all. Usually there's some kind of death trap involved, right?
Yeah. I love this.
Yeah, there's such an amazing artifact of like the last couple years. But now a British ad regulatory body has banned some of the ads from Gardenscapes and Homescapes. And like Gardenscapes and Homescapes are huge. They're like almost Candy Crush level large games, right? And they do these ads too. Like all sorts of mobile game companies are making these misleading ads because they work incredibly well. And yes, Salty Horse is right. There are people making games that are based on these fake ads. Those games have not done anywhere near as well as Homescapes and Gardenscapes. But
the version of the new style of these, I was asking Kate about this, but I don't know if she knows about these. And the thing is, I was searching for an example of it, but it's very hard to find ads.
Yeah, it is. It's really hard. There are compilations of them on YouTube. It's pretty funny. Yeah,
you can avoid them, but you can't find them either. It's weird.
Right. That's right.
So anyway, but the ones I like are for strategy games, and they involve drawing little arrangements of troops that then spring into life. And they're all about this juicy kind of fluid dynamics. There's so many monsters coming at you that it's just wave after wave of these particle systems almost. And then there's so many soldiers that it forms. It's like the hyper turbocharged version of StarCraft. Have you seen these?
I have not seen these ads, but I played a game that's like that. There's like an outer space drone game, which is basically an RTS, but where you're controlling a cloud of drones and you like draw.
And these little ads, typically they start zoomed in, so it's like a character, and then they they zoom out, and you see that you're in this world
scale.
So much detail that it's like these orcs are just an ocean that's pouring in, and they're just lovingly animated, and they're so beautiful. But I like the fact that there's now this plucky British government agency is going to
being like
with these guys, because again, I think that's what produces culture, right? It's
right, like more friction between these things.
Yeah, of like the people, the scammers and the schemers and the people like trying to manipulate the system, and then the other people trying to fight back. It's like an ecosystem, right? So it needs.
Well, here's the amazing part. Here's the amazing part, which I didn't realize. So Playrix is the enormous mobile game company that makes Gardenscapes and Homescapes, and they had already put some of this gameplay, this pull the pins out, drop the lava on the character. They put puzzles like that into their games.
Yeah, that's what I assumed that they were doing.
Yeah,
in order to justify it.
Right. So they had already kind of justified it, but of course they didn't start doing these ads until like a few years into the lifespan of Homescapes and Gardenscapes, and so that type of gameplay shows up at like level 310 or whatever. And
I'm betting that it doesn't perform well in the game.
Oh no, yeah, it would like you wouldn't
be successful. Yeah,
no, of course they're not.
This is not something that people want to do. This is something people think they want to do.
Yeah, exactly. So I completely agree with what Salty Horse is saying. And actually, we should go to the next link because there was this more in-depth article in New York Magazine about like, okay, how do these ads get made? So if you want to know, like, they don't actually interview somebody on the marketing team, but they do sort of do a little bit of investigation. They talk to actually the game writer and narrative designer for this game, Lily's Garden, which is a competitor of Gardenscapes. And and that's Stella Sacco, who's a local game developer here in New York. And Stella is like, yeah, this is nothing like the story that I made, because the Lily's Garden ads are all about being super salacious. Yeah, unfortunately, the tweets aren't there now. But but the Lily's Garden ads are all about super relationship drama where, like, this is an ad we're seeing right now where Lily finds out she's pregnant and her boyfriend dumps her, and then she has to go get a new boyfriend. There's other ones where she's like making fun of her ex-boyfriend's penis size, and these are all in these video ads.
Watch, here it comes. This is I don't know what the timing is, but did you see the payoff there?
Right, the payoff is she's not really pregnant.
Look at that,
right?
So good. And
so this has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with the story. Stella Sacco was like, "What? That's not my story."
The interesting thing that this has nothing to do with the game, right? Yeah. But these ads are both kind of genuinely funny, kind of, and strangely weird, and kind of grown up in a way. But they're like grown up versions of the kids' content that is right. Magically generated by Russian bot farms on YouTube. So you know those kid videos where it's Spider-Man and the princess from Frozen,
right, and they're like all on people's fingers and
Hulk, right,
and they dance around.
Yeah, the Hulk, and it's often about paternity. It's all confusion. It's often like, wait a minute, right. I'm her boyfriend. What, is she pregnant? And then they, you know what I mean? Like, it's like little jokes about relationships and pregnancy but they're surreal
too. Then like somebody's head comes off and it floats over and goes on someone else. Like,
so in a weird way, these are like primal. This is the new mythos, right? We are in the middle of inventing a new kind of story. That is bubbling up out of the global id, and also that's a great spit take. No coffee comes out. This guy does it. It's clearly a spit take, but there's no coffee coming out of his mouth. It's kind of an interesting.
Yeah, so I think Berlivia is right. So this is optimizing for a certain behavior, right? That's what happens, and that's the same thing with the weird YouTube, Spider-Man meets the Hulk meets Elsa from Frozen content. It's all optimizing to get people to keep doing something or to do something. In this case, I think we can kind of reverse engineer what's happening here, right? With these Lily's Gardens ads, it's super obvious. It's like, oh my God, what is this game? It's like so over the top. I've never seen a game that's this trashy. It's like, what if there were a game that were as trashy as watching a reality show where people are cheating on each other, right? And the weird thing is that there are some games that are like that. There's like a Temptation Island game, but like selling I don't know, like in other animations, like styles or something, like it gets people to go and like look at that game. And then with
Robert, your Chiron game is on point today.
It's really on point, yeah.
I mean, it's a big day for Logan Claire. Let's just tone it down a little bit. There's no need to have to smash every ball out of the park. Not every pitch has to end up with a home run. All right.
But it's true though. But this is
Robert.
It's exactly, Robert knows the kind of thing that you love, Frank. It's like the mind is looking at itself and it produces these ads because that's what's inside of us.
I was about to make that joke, and I looked down and it's already in the Chiron.
It's already there, yeah. And then I had to explain it. But yeah, so like our brains pop the stuff out, and I feel like with the other ads. And I was talking to a game designer at a mobile company who has some of these fake ads that their marketing team has produced. And his theory was like, yeah, you see something that just looks so obviously stupidly easy. And you're like, I could do that. And then you watch the video fail at it or something like that, right? And it just creates this moment of like, give me that. Let me do that, right?
But I don't understand the hate for these things, because this is our Odysseus, right? This is our Iliad, I think. This is the hero with 12 billion faces, and we should embrace it. This is our new myth. And we should teach it, and we should all be writing our own stories according to this formula, because it's
here's the fascinating part of that myth though, is that it's not the same thing as like, it has to be different from what happens when you get to the game, because we know that like, yeah, if you got to the game and it was the same kind of gameplay, that then you would do it once and you would be like, I don't want to play this. This is terrible.
No, that's not what people want in the game.
That's not what they want in the game.
Is a cartoon drawing of a sexy person in hell.
Right.
So that's what the content of the actual game is.
Yeah, it's just you fight demons over and over again, and you get a different cartoon sexy person who gives you something. But yeah, I don't know. Like, this bait and switch is also part of of how it all works, right? Because the reason that companies do this is because the bait and switch turns out not to matter. Like, we may recoil from it and be like, this is terrible. Like, this is bad. It's dishonest. And it is. But it's also like, it's not going to go away because it just works on people. I don't know, like, is the UK ad regulatory agency gonna like put their foot down enough to stop this? I don't know.
It's interesting because I think there's a mix. I'm trying to put myself in the people's shoes, and I feel like it's probably a mix of, first you think like, well, geez, it's not, I mean, games are complicated. This is probably something that happens later. And so you're not like, you're not surprised when the game doesn't look anything like this, because the game never looks anything like the box. It never looks anything like the video you saw of it, because it's always, that's a thing that happens later, right? Imagine showing someone, a boss fight and something, and then you start World of Warcraft. You're like, I guess the boss fight is later, so they have that. Yeah, sure. And then I also think eventually they realize, oh yeah, this is kind of what I want to do. Like,
right. No, actually, this game is fine.
I kind of get that that's a bargain, and it's sort of like, yeah, it's fine. So my take is that it's everything's fine.
Yeah, I think it may just normalize, and there are always going to be people who are pissed off about it, but it just doesn't matter in terms of the overall stats, right? It's yeah. So I don't know like the evolution of advertising is always going to be like convoluted and baffling, and like a eternal, I don't know, arms race, arms race inside your brain.
Don't forget, I got Jonathan Blow to sign a copy of Sneak King.
Oh, yeah, good point.
And he's still mad at me. He's still mad at me. It happened at the Game Center. He gave a talk at the Game Center. A student came up and asked him, said, would you sign this, please? They said, I love Braid, but of course, Braid doesn't come in a box. So would you sign this instead? And Jonathan said no. And I signed it. Oh, now I'm remembering it was me. I signed it.
You signed it? Did you sign John Blow, though?
And handed it back. So anyway, sorry, Jonathan. He's still mad.
Oh, okay. Well, I think he made great contributions to Sneak King.
Yeah.
Over at King Games. All right, let's
next.
Yeah, let's keep going. What do we have next in the docket? Oh yeah, we have to go back to Animal Crossing. It's official Animal Crossing time. All right, yeah. So this is like, I don't know. Some of you probably saw this coming. Yeah, there's a Biden-Harris island in Animal Crossing. It's all decked out with political content. I don't know what else is there to say really about this.
I find Biden's position confusing because we all know he's against malarkey. But where does he stand on balderdash or poppycock or hogwash? None of these other, it's not clear. So that's
you think he would be against all old-fashioned forms of mischief.
What about palaver?
Where does he stand on palaver? hijinks.
So anyway, yeah, it's Animal Crossing content. We're contractually obligated to touch on it. But what can we say? Is there an election coming up?
Well, I guess I heard there's some kind of election happening sometime soon. If you're interested in that sort of thing, you should vote. Yeah, I think you should
vote against Trump. How about that? Can we
sure, why not?
To say that, am I going on a limb? I think one of the things that really quickly, like I know we don't.
This is really, a partisan.
really quick, I want to get super partisan. I just think that some people have this image of voting that the power of democracy is its ability to select good leaders. It's not particularly good at selecting.
No, it's terrible.
The genuine true power of democracy is the ability to get rid of the most incompetent and tyrannical leaders. That is its function. Be proud to exercise that function. Whatever you feel about the person you're voting for, be proud to exercise the true power of democracy in voting people out, vote the worst people out.
Right, and you can think of it as, a way of getting rid of terrible people that doesn't have to result in as many people getting hurt or dying as the alternatives.
Yeah, it's so hard to know because think about how voting a good person, how difficult that problem is, because the person you're voting for is themselves trying to predict what's going to happen as the result of certain policy changes. So they already have this like complex relationship with the people. Now you're voting like about them. It's just so.
Yeah, it's like who knows. Right.
But as long as we have a system that is even remotely functional and doesn't fall into the equilibrium traps of tyranny or total incompetence or falling apart or whatever, then there's a chance that we can just slowly be gradually improving and getting better.
Right. At least this gives us some opportunity to figure out what's going on. And so here's what I think is maybe closer to the political alignment of the fan base and chat of the discourse. And the question is, like, did you see or hear Noam Chomsky getting into the argument with like leftist podcasters? I think that's something that happened in the last week. Chomsky came out, and Noam Chomsky was like, "Why would you not vote? Just vote. It's like, so it's just something you should do. Ideally, it would take like 10 minutes if everything weren't so broken. Go vote." And he was sort of taken to task for it. What? I think it was maybe one of the Chapo people. It was, what's his name? Virgil Texas, right?
Yeah, Virgil Texas.
It was Virgil Texas arguing with Noam Chomsky and right. Yeah, he's like definitely.
He's a friend.
And then and Brianna Joy Gray, who was that they were arguing against. And I don't know. It was remarkable to me, like, because Noam Chomsky is like not a big like believer in like, well, all you got to do is vote. I mean, and he said it in the thing. He was like, voting is the least important part of trying to like make change and be an activist. He's like, but you still have to do it. Like, just do it. And I think what you're saying kind of dovetails with that, right? Because voting is the mechanism by which we have an opportunity, like pull the trap door lever, right? And just like try to make somebody go away. And so like at least do that. But yeah, no, he was drubbed on in the podcastosphere for saying this. And I was like, what?
Look, in the fine tradition of this of the whatever this show is called, the Discourse, I guess.
The Discourse.
We often talk about systemicity, right? Meta systems, right? This idea that we're surrounded by systems. We're surrounded by these institutional systems, logical systems, systems of governance, systems that are like psychotechnologies that we use to kind of like frame our thoughts and organize our behavior. And there is a necessary skill of being able to move between them, like not to allow any one of them to define us, or because each one of them is its own trap if you just submit to it entirely. So the ability to kind of like understand and negotiate and navigate through different kinds of systems, this is kind of what we're talking about in relative to politics. Like there's the meta systems idea is that you want a working democracy. You want some form of working government, right? And that's the power is making sure that that thing is operational, right? That before anything else happens, you have to have some form of operational democratic system.
Well, yeah, in part because we live in a structure where we live in infrastructure where that's necessary for people to actually maintain their lives and not die, and that the people who would be hardest hit by that are the people who like lack the political voice, right? Like all of these things, like I don't know. Some of this stuff seems obvious to me, and I'm confused about where some of the leftist internet is at now. I mean, a lot of it seems to be point scoring, but. I think what you're saying is a really good way of looking at it, because it's like, okay, in the moment when you have an opportunity to vote, you should be thinking about voting one way. And then as soon as you vote, you should be like thinking about it in a completely different way. Like you should not remain completely consistent and be like, I'm so glad I voted. I did my job. Good job. Now I'm done. I'm out of here. Politics over with, right? No, instead you're like, all right, thinking about electoral politics over. Now I like shift gears and look at a different system in which like other ways that I could actually make a difference or support people or create networks of aid or have uprisings between elections, you know. And I think that's a really good application of meta-systemicity to politics at the individual level, right?
Yep, and it's a game design insight, hopefully, right? I always like to imagine that there's a world in which game designers and even game players do demonstrate a little bit more of this kind of systems literacy thinking, this kind of more sophisticated approach to understanding how systems work, how they break down, how even, how to have multiple systems that you're moving between, why you want a system to keep going, even if it's a little bit broken, or when you need to abandon a system and replace it with something totally new. Right? These are all game design issues that
totally. Great use of the human neo-purpose facility in our giant cortex to actually be able to think about this stuff. And I don't know, like it's as you're fond of saying, it's not a black and white issue, right? It's not like you have to be all pro-voting or all anti-voting or something like that. And I don't know. The thing that rubbed me wrong about Brianna Joy Gray and Virgil Texas is like, no, every time you vote, you're just supporting a rotten system, which is like what is your point? I don't know. Anyway, so there's our detour into leftist podcast politics.
All systems are rotten.
Yeah. No, they are. And that's and then we should remember that always. We should always be remembered that like whatever system we make is rotten, and we need to be able to like be ripping it down. Like as soon as it's useful, we're like, okay, this thing is going to go bad soon. Yeah. It's like avocados.
Sometimes you sniff it, you're like, it's still good. It's good for another week.
Yeah, it's like, okay, we could keep this around. We shouldn't throw it away yet, but it's not gonna be good for that long. We got to come up with something better.
The thing you should avoid is the search for a pure system.
Those
golden system with no flaws that it's going to be total and permanent. Like that's
right. Right. They're trying to end history with the perfect ideology. I mean, this is what I find really suspicious about the neoliberals, right? Or like who is being. Right? Yeah, sure. Well, the Marxists never really. I put Marxism in the category of like, okay, you didn't really get to try it yet.
Right, but like the image, right? The image of a perfect, golden.
Yeah, but like I don't know how many like diehards over the age of 16 are like that with Marxism these days. But the neoliberals, but the neoliberals are like, oh yeah, we figured this out. We created the Francis Fukuyama like vision of the perfect society that just goes on indefinitely into the future.
But they don't anymore. Like those guys, if you listen to them,
they're like
they all recognize that's not.
Yeah, no, I know, but they had their turn, right? And so anybody who still talks like that, I'm like, ooh, you're like really cruising for a person. Okay. Let's get back to games. Yeah, so what's our next thing? Oh yeah, this is from Steph Clark. Oh, the last one was suggested by Chris Wallace, by the way. I feel like we ought to be giving credit. But Steph
the
Clark,
Golden Axe remake.
Yeah, Golden Axe. This was Sega released, I guess on Steam or somewhere, a prototype of a remake of Golden Axe that was made in 2012. This is I don't know, it's an interesting story. You should read the thread. It's from a developer who was he was the prototype maker, right? This is a really cool job to have at a large studio, being like, hey, make some playable prototypes that we can evaluate, right? This is the kind of thing that like Chaim Gingold and like, you know, Chris Hecker were doing for Will Wright, right? But yeah,
this is probably something more like a vertical slice.
Possibly, yeah. Then a real, no. Then it's not an experimental prototype. It's a remake of Golden Axe, and they threw it together in 2 days, right? But then here's the weird thing. So this guy tells this whole story about like, oh, I made this thing. The higher ups were like, this is terrible. Why doesn't it look like God of War? Why didn't you make God of War but Golden Axe? Like, why didn't you do that in 2 days instead? And then it was like, oh my God, this is all garbage. And I guess they kept working on it, but they were completely unappreciated, and it just got shelved. And then the funny thing is, and I don't know why this is that surprising, but it still is a little shocking somehow, even to my sensibilities, that like years and years later, 8 years later, it just pops up on Steam. And Sega is like, hey, here, check out this buggy old crappy prototype for a remake of Golden Axe. Like, is this? I don't know. I feel a little bit offended on this guy's behalf, and he ends his.
Yeah, what it is bad. It's a wrong-footed move by Sega. It's just right. It's not a good look. It's embarrassing, and it's trying to be funny. It's trying to be Tim and Eric or something. I don't know. It's just not. It's not on brand for Sega, and it's a little bit rude for the people who were involved in making it.
And it looks like they pulled it from Steam just in the last, this morning. It was available.
It done. We're like the local news that goes and shames the people that make the sandwich and they don't put enough mayonnaise on, and then we get them shut down.
Yeah. So I guess good for Sega for recognizing that this wasn't cool. Well, so this is an outgrowth, though. Like, I feel that part of Sega's strategy here was to be like, oh, you know what's really funny these days? Totally broken, busted, buggy games. Because that's what I mean. It's not really, right? It's a 2 week like a vertical slice of a game that like you shouldn't put it out and be like, look at this. Like, who made this stupid piece of crap, right? But like they're pretending this is Sega. Like stupidly acting like a streamer who likes to find like busted, messed up games, right? And like laugh at how bad it is.
2 thumbs down. I'm gonna do the Zoom thumbs down icon. This is the thumbs down icon on Zoom. Right?
Oh, what the clapping hands?
There's 2 emotions you can express on Zoom: thumbs up and this. So
I don't know. I have this one.
Right.
I have this, which I feel like is the most shady, the shady one here, right? It's like, you can't see it. Yeah, our Zoom icons aren't showing up. Like Robert has wisely cropped them out.
Let me describe the joke to you guys. Okay, so next thing, Jeff Engelstein sends in a link.
Yeah, this is this is an interesting link. Now, this is a more cerebral one that kind of overlaps with our jobs, right? So this is a professor at the University of Chicago, who's a professor of history, right? Which is, I think it's exciting in the first place that a professor of history has launched a game platform. And actually, I'm not totally sure. I think that it's a game platform in the sense of it's a little bit like a tabletop RPG where students are invited to contribute to like a giant wiki that is like like doing a lot of world building for like a role playing game world.
That's what
but even that, I'm like
a Facebook group and a wiki, I think.
Right. But even that, I'm like, okay, good on you, history department, go for it. Like, I'm happy if like there's more humanities department getting involved and it's not just all like STEM overlap with games and being like, let's make a STEM game of some sort. But this article here in the Chicago Maroon, and it's the same Ada Palmer. But here's the sketchy part, unfortunately, that Ada Palmer is like taking the rights of everything any student does as homework or any assignment that's done within this project. Anything they do that, I don't know, like the language seemed vague enough that it could be like anything that they do during the same semester. So
here was
big mistake.
Here's my take on this. It's clearly not the right way to do it. And my take is this looks like it might have been an attempt to sort of avoid problems by making the IP really clear. So let's use this boilerplate. Well, we got to make sure we get out ahead of this because these are issues and instead they created a problem. If they just had none of this, like, I'm not sure she's planning on harvesting this and using it in her books, but if she is, that's weird,
so if she is, that's terrible.
That's terrible.
Like, I don't know, you never, like, people should have learned this lesson by now, right? Don't put random boilerplate language about people's intellectual properties rights into your game. Or I don't know, maybe this is because, like, professors in the history department who also is a sci-fi author, like, I don't know, maybe people outside of certain spheres dealing with software and user communities online just don't have experience with this, right? Don't know how to think about, oh wait, we're crowdsourcing this, oh wait, we're all doing this stuff together, we want students to contribute and create something shared. The moment you go over into that territory, you have to be careful and respectful of people's rights. And I don't know, maybe a bunch of people just don't know that.
Don't create more problems. You're trying to solve problems, you just end up creating lots of problems.
I'm still shocked that how many universities kind of have this weird approach of owning students' work. Yeah, like, and I don't. And here's my question. Maybe other people know in chat too, or maybe you know, Frank. Do we survive like not having anything to do that? Like, we've never tried to own a single thing any student has made. Like, we have no interest in it. And is that because we're an art school? Is it because we're an art school? Like, if we were more in the main line of academia where we had to like publish research in order to survive as an institution, would we also fall into this terrible trap of being like, oh, students, please work on stuff, and then the department will own it?
I don't know what it is in other fields. But our policy is crystal clear. If you're a student at the NYU Game Center, you own your own IP. Anything you create, you own, and you could do whatever you want with. That's our policy.
Right. Now, it seems obvious to me.
It's different from other game design schools, and I think the main difference is that if your roots are in tech departments, tech disciplines, and academia. In technology, there's a whole different relationship to intellectual property because patents that are developed as a direct result of the research that's happening within the department are often a substantial source of income for the universities. And that is, in our case, coming out of tradition of creative fields. Right. Arts, it's not the case that we have that connection to ownership of IP. So that's the difference, I think.
Yeah, I think that does make sense. And then that's exactly the kind of thing I was wondering. Yeah, and I could see if it's patents, especially, well, because it overlaps with a lot of other stuff probably going on within like research at the university. And I don't know. It's a big mess. But yeah, I don't understand why anyone has language like this that would cover something that's not a patent, that's just copyrighted creative work. It seems weird.
Yeah.
All
right. 2 thumbs down.
Yeah, so fix your language. Don't do this to students. Yeah. Let's keep going. So let's go back to Amazon. We were making fun of Amazon last week for not being able to make successful games and for having to like shut down their giant game efforts. They have exactly one game left in development, I think, which weirdly is also called like New World. Just like this Terra Nova thing.
And also they own all of your IP. If you
and Amazon owns everyone's IP. I don't know if you know. But one thing that I wanted to mention last week that we didn't get to was this giant expose article in gamesindustry.biz, which I want to give a shout out because gamesindustry.biz is a weird little publication. They are not, they're not focused, like as maybe the headline leads you to believe, they're not trying to reach out to players. They're not a consumer focused publication like Kotaku or Polygon or PC Gamer. They're writing to other game developers, and so they have this kind of very staid look. But they published an enormous expose on how bad working conditions have been at Twitch. So Twitch, we're on Twitch right now. We're calling Twitch out. I don't know, is everything going to just disappear on us? But Yeah, definitely not. And here's interestingly, I read through this article and I was like, it does mention that things were really bad in the early days. And then they got a little bit more professionalized once Amazon took over, which isn't surprising, but it also sounds like it was professionalized in the way where it's like, okay, we kind of pushed it down. We like put it more under wraps, right? It was no longer this like fratty, like dude startup. Now it was like people wearing suits and like keeping their discriminatory behavior under wraps. But
which is good.
Yeah, so I wonder, like, I always feel
people acting,
I guess so.
People acting according to like people acting sort of against their instincts in order to like fulfill what they think is being expected of them is a good thing. Like we should all do that a little bit, right? Most of us have better instincts than
in the big picture
on Twitch, but even so, I mean, let's all be on our best behavior with our little corporate attitudes about taking, helping other people and being more compassionate and kinder and more polite.
Yeah, I mean, in the big picture, I agree. I think it probably does. Like, approbation reduces the absolute total of incidences of horrible, biased, discriminatory, and harassing behavior. And then in individual cases, it makes it harder, right? So there's still all of these like little cases where now, because it's hidden, like you wouldn't know that it's happening, and therefore you walk into a situation where you're like, you get caught by surprise. And so like those types of things will emerge more in situations where racism's unacceptable, but it's still everywhere, right? But it's hidden. And so then it just pops up and, grabs you by the ankle and trips you up.
Yeah.
But the overall...
It's always going to be... Yeah. It's always going to be around. I mean, that's the thing is that, again, it's not that there's some pure state of perfect harmonious coexistence. It's like the hard work of living with each other in a more decent way. Right. That's that hard work ain't going away.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to, and once you mow the top of the weeds off the lawn, then there's still all these roots and things underneath. And I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, well, wouldn't it be easier not to mow the tops off of everything first and just like pull it up instead? I don't know what that looks like.
That's what Jason Rohr told his neighbors when he refused to mow his lawn. He said, and they tried to citizens arrest him.
Yeah, we can always go back to Jason Rohr for a good metaphor. Not. Maybe not.
Anyway, yeah, Twitch apparently still has lots of problems that they need to work on, as does the Sea of Thieves devs who refuse to punish the toxic behavior of certain over-the-top toxic Sea of Thieves players. So
right.
This game where you famously pretend to be a pirate and float around and get swords that all do the same thing but have different names, and then you go on someone else's boat and you sink it. It's here's the thing about Sea of Thieves. It's gorgeous. The water in Sea of Thieves is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It's just a video game that it's just so weirdly weird and good looking.
Well, it has that rare touch, that rare visual style, right?
The design is just so open-ended. It's sort of like, do what you want. There's really no reason. We're just here to eat some coconuts and have fun. But here's the thing I want to say before we get into this particular case. Speaking for my wife, Hillary, whenever the topic of pirates comes up, she remarks on the weirdness of the fact that pirates are just a jolly pop cultural figure that our children dress up as, and they're like a friendly, fun, part of the pantheon of cultural icons. She's like, this is horrible. Pirates, think about what pirates do. Think of
they're right.
Far away from them. They used to be things. There's still some pirates in the world. They're horrific criminals. They're terrible people.
They murder and rape people. Right.
Like, why have they become this sanitized thing that we're happy to let our children embody? Anyway, so I don't feel that way about pirates, but I just wanted to speak for Hillary because I know in my head.
Well, I sort of wonder whether it's like there was a time when pirates were like maybe one of the most terrifying thing that you could imagine happening to you, right? Yeah. Where it would be like if you were on a ship, you were like, well, if we get captured by pirates, our lives will be living hell or we'll be dead, right? It's just like the worst people.
The worst. And at the same time, the roots of democracy, some of the very earliest forms of democratic participation were pirates because it was voluntary. you joined a pirate crew, you signed an agreement, and you had certain rights and a power to get rid of the captain. Like that was the only way that they could recruit working crews. And so that writing down their system, having a charter, and like having a system by which you could get rid of the leader, that's like so it's like it's interesting, and it's kind of related maybe to this news story.
Yeah, and I kind of, so here's the interesting thing, as people are saying in chat, this is one of these games, and I've worked on games like this, going back to, games like Sissy Fight. We have the same kind of issue, right? Where people are saying, well, look, this is a game where you're supposed to be mean to each other. It's a PvP game, right? You are like eliminating each other. You're like taking their stuff. Like, how can you complain about people being toxic? And I think the specific ways it comes out in any given community are fascinating and different, right? So in Sea of Thieves, there are groups of people who get together to form, I think they're called nations or something. And they just play the game in like these collections, like herds of people who are basically like pacifist herbivores, right? Where we're like, we can avoid all the conflict, or like getting ganked by griefers by like just crowding together in a giant herd. So it's actually it's actually an interesting response to the cutthroat world, right? And the same exact thing happened. I don't know if you remember back in the Sissy Fight days. For those of you who don't know, Sissy Fight 2000 is one of the first games that I collaborated on with Eric Zimmerman, who's another founding faculty of the Game Center. Frank, you were around back then too. You probably remember Sissy Fight. But Sissy Fight was a game where you are you're a little girl attacking other little girls on a playground, and like the same thing happened. People found ways to be nice to each other and to collaborate and to create a society within that game, right? And that's like part of what gives games longevity, is people finding ways to like actually be nice to each other. And then there are other people that don't like that. So in Sea of Thieves, what happened was there were a bunch of streamers who are like, no, this response to Sea of Thieves cannot be allowed to stand. We're going to just do everything we can to wreck your nations. And they did things that are really considered bad form in streaming communities and in online games in general, like just sending people to go harass individuals, right, was basically the thing. So like, it doesn't matter how PvP or like cutthroat your game is, you're not supposed to send people to go harass one individual player and then like have that person get deluged with threats and like bigoted harassment garbage and brigading and all that kind of stuff, right?
It's so fascinating to me, because video games have this the contemporary fascination with morality and moral choices, and in a game like this, in a situation like this, we see that at its best in a way. It's like in Survivor. Like, one of my favorite things, I love the game Survivor, and one of my favorite things about every season of Survivor is that moment at the end where there's a philosophical puzzle that gets pulled into the game itself. Are your actions in the game, do they reveal your true character? Or is your true character protected? Is there a firewall between your true character and the act, because the game is a separate fictional universe? Or is it like a thing that channels you? Like in the real world, you're a nice person, but in the game you reveal that you're like, where does that line drawn? It's such a good, this is the example of that in Sea of Thieves. And I think that's, it's great.
Yeah, it's all those overlapping layers. We said, or like what people call bleed in the role-playing game community.
EVE Online, famous example of where this happened.
All the classic kind of stuff. And EVE Online, I don't know, they have like their community has certain kinds of standards, which are basically like, no, you can do anything to each other. It's like really anything goes. I'm sure even they have some limits. Like I don't think they would caught into doxing or swatting somebody, right?
I'm sure they would.
Yeah, but they're different for every community. And I think this is what the Sea of Thieves devs are dealing with. They're like, wait, okay, they have to take a stand on this stuff. They don't have a choice, right? Well, and it carries a lot of weight.
I hope that the fine folks at Rare see this as an opportunity to dig into this as a design problem, right? Games are not software. Games are not appliances. Games are not just public amenities, right? Games are designed culture, and your game has stumbled into something fascinating and potentially cool and interesting. Ball's in your court, Rare. Let's see what you do with it.
Yeah, agreed. All right, we're at 2 p.m. We got to wrap up there. And I want to say thank you to our captioner, Mirabai, and thank you to Robert Yang, who, as always, is our host and also doing all these amazing chirons. And this is Robert's last show of the Discourse, doing chirons and hosting.
It's been a pleasure serving under your command, sir. Logan, Claire, you got some pretty big shoes to fill.
That's our salient point. Okay, we're done.
Yeah, that's me. Yeah, this will be my last show, unfortunately, but don't worry, I'll still be around. In the meantime, I was your operator behind the scenes, Robert Yang. Your news hosts were Naomi Clark and Frank Lance. Graphics by Winnie Song, and captioning was by Mirabai Knight of Steno Knight Cart Services. Also, just want to remind you, this Wednesday, we are co-sponsoring a session of Indiecade. Our session's called The Infinite Playground, Player's Guide to Imagination. That's I believe, a session about the Bernie de Koven book, The Infinite Playground, co-presenting with Holly Gramazio and Celia Pierce, both friends of the department. Anyway, check out that stream on Wednesday, and in the meantime, see you all around on the internet. Bye.